So as you can see out in my backyard, it's a beautiful day. A beautiful day in West Tennessee. Seems like the perfect day to try something hot and new in my Instant Pot. So yeah, it's cold and yucky. And it's the end of deer season, so I have a butt ton of venison in my freezer that I really need to use. And if I had to pick anything to fix today, it would be like a good home style venison steak and gravy that cooks in its own gravy, you know, that kind that you put on mashed potatoes with peas. You can make bird's nest if you want to, as the little kids call them. But that usually takes a long time, like a couple hours plus to do traditionally, and I just ain't time for that. So I'm going to attempt to recreate my mother-in-law's famous deer steaks in their gravy in my Instant Pot. This is my husband's favorite because it's his mama's, and you know everybody thinks that nothing is ever as good as your mama's. And I'll have to admit, it's pretty daggone good. She does a good job. So I'm going to try to recreate it in the Instant Pot. We'll see how it goes. I'm optimistic. For this recipe, I decided to go ahead and use a small pack of tenderloin because it was just 4 little pieces in my little pack. I didn't want to use a ton of meat because I wasn't sure if this recipe would work in the Instant Pot. So I didn't want to waste a lot of meat, but you could make more. The key to it is not the cut. I mean, you can use tenderloin, you can use the ham steaks, whatever you want to use of your meat, you can use it. The key to it is after you've thawed it out, you want to blot it dry. And then you want to pound it so they are all the same thickness. You want the thickness of your cuts to be uniform as you're browning them. So just FYI, you can use any cut of meat you want. And also people like to marinate their wild game before they use it. They think it takes the gaminess out of it, and a lot of times it does. The most popular are apple juice or apple cider to marinate it in. For this type of recipe that cooks in its own gravy like this, you do not need to do that. You do not need to pre-treat your meat. Just pop it out of the freezer, thaw it out, blot it dry, and pound it to uniform thickness. That's it. So this is what they look like when I took them out of the bag. You want to get them good and dry, okay, because we're going to brown them first. But I also don't want them to cook unevenly, so I'm going to pound them out a bit, which is real simple. I mean, you can do it whichever way you prefer. I usually just put it in between 2 bunch of paper towels because I'm trying to dry it anyway, and I beat it like that. So I'm going to do that with my 4 steaks and make sure they all look good. Okay, I've pounded out my tenderloin steaks to about the same size, and all I've got here is some flour, about a teaspoon of salt, and almost a teaspoon of pepper. You can do less pepper if you want. Most people do a half a teaspoon. We like ours just a touch peppery. That's just your own personal preference. So I just kind of mix that dredging flour up a little bit. Now, I need to get my oil ready. I've put in here about a 1/3 of a cup of, you can use either canola or vegetable oil. I have vegetable oil in my pot. What I'm going to do is start heating it up because we need to let it preheat just a touch. So I'm putting it on saute, and I don't think it's going to take long, but I'll just go ahead and put 30 minutes. I think that's usually the default setting anyway. I want it to cook on medium. See, the 30 minutes is the default for that anyway, and then I'll just press start. So I'm going to let this saute function heat up just a touch, because again, this is just like your stovetop, all right? You've got to preheat it. It's just like think of it as a hot plate. That's all it is right now. Is at the saute function, it's acting as a hot plate. So I'm going to let it preheat just a touch, get warmed. I'm going to dredge my venison steaks into my flour, salt, pepper mixture. And again, this mixture, you can do whatever you wanted in it. If you like a little more zip, you can add some pepper, some red pepper. You can add seasoned salt, whatever you like. We're kind of more traditional plain Jane, so I just use salt and pepper. Anyway, I'm gonna dredge that, get that ready, and then in just a couple of minutes, I'm gonna come back here and brown these suckers up in my oil. Okay, my pot is hot enough. See how it says cooking? So now that my pot is hot enough, and I have my deer steaks dredged, I'm gonna do them 2 at a time, and I'm not gonna do them long. I just want a little bit of brown on them, and then I have 4 steaks. I do not want to crowd this, so I am going to remove these 2 before I do the other ones. So I'll just pop these little suckers into a bowl in a minute and let the other 2 go. And then I'll show you what we do. It's pretty simple. This really, really will not take long, okay? You don't really want to cook them all the way through. You just want to brown them. You just want to brown them. That's all. And the flour is important. And it's okay if more flour falls in your pot, okay? Because we've got plans for this flour, okay? So I'm just browning these suckers up. Take just a couple minutes. All right, I've got my last 2 deer steaks in there that I just dredged. And then I plopped it here. I've removed the other 2. They're hanging out for just a minute. Well, I don't want to crowd my pot while I'm browning these suckers up. It won't take long. All right, I just flipped those, and they're about done. When I pull these suckers out, I'm going to stick them over there in that bowl with those. And then I'm going to use a can of beef broth to deglaze this pan if there's anything stuck on the bottom. The classic recipe when you make this on the stovetop, or if you use like an electric skillet, is you don't deglaze it. You just fill it with water till the water covers the deer steaks. And then you put the lid on it. Do not open the lid, and you let it cook for like, I don't know, a couple hours. I mean, you just let it slowly. You put it on low, and you just let it go for a long time and slowly. But trying this in the pressure cooker, we're going to speed up the process. And instead of using water to cover my deer steaks, I'm going to use a can of beef broth to add some more flavor. This is all a big experiment, so we'll see how it goes. Taking my deer steaks out. They're hanging out in my pot here. They're not done. They're just a little browned, okay? But I want to get all of this bit off of my bottom of my pan. There's still a little bit of oil left in it, so be really careful, okay? This is hot. But before you cancel your saute function, do not cancel it yet, okay? Keep it on. This is when you want to add your beef broth to deglaze your pan, okay? It's real simple to do, okay? I'm just going to put my beef broth in here. One can's enough. If you put too much liquid in there, it's bad, okay? Because it'll splash out on you while you're trying to whisk it around. But 1 can should be enough. I'm going to use just 1 can to get all the brown bits off the bottom of my pan. You want to get the brown bits off too, because sometimes that can cause a burn warning. And if you get the burn notice on your Instant Pot, it will not come to pressure. So, let's get these little brown bits off in just a second. Alright, as you can see, I've got everything whisked off the bottom. It just takes a second. It's not very long. Say, less than a minute to get all that off there. Okay, now that that's done, I'm going to cancel my saute function. Okay? Canceled it. Now we're going to add our deer steaks back to the pot. Okay. We're going to add them back to the pot. You don't want to super overcrowd it, but it's okay if it overlaps a bit, okay? We just want them to fit, so it's not the end of the world. All right. Okay, the next thing is I want to make sure that I have enough liquid in here to basically cover these steaks, okay? Which it appears that I do. If you didn't, for some reason, you could always add some water, okay? That's like I said, most people add water on the stove to do this with. They use water and oil. I'm using beef broth this time. All right, so they're basically covered. everything looks good. All that liquid is just the oil that we basically like browned in, and the beef broth. It's still hot from the saute function, but it has been canceled. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to clean this lip, okay? We need to clean this, make sure this is all free of debris. The way I'm gonna do that is take a towel and just make sure that my pot is free of debris, okay? And then, before you use your Instant Pot, every time, I always tell this because this is so important, make sure that your ring is properly seated, that guard is in the groove where it's supposed to be, otherwise your pot won't come to pressure. All right, mine's good. I have the Ultra, so all I'm gonna do now is put the lid on it, and it seals automatically on the Ultra. If you had the other Instant Pots or another pressure cooker, you would put your lid on it, and you would set your valve to sealing at this point. But mine seals automatically when you close the lid. So what I'm gonna do is now I'm going to put it on the pressure cooker function. Okay, and then I'm going to give this is a little bit of a gamble because I've never done this before, but I researched different pieces of meats, and it seems to be that most people do 15 minutes for small steaks. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do 15 minutes on high, and then I just press start. So it's going to do its thing, preheat, and we'll check back on it in a minute. In the meantime, I'm going to clean up my mess here, and I got to slice up my potatoes because you can't have deer steaks with gravy without having mashed potatoes. All right, this is a bit of an experiment because, again, I've never cooked it in this method before. It's finished. It just beeped that it was done. I'm going to let it keep warm and hang out to do its natural release while I'm finishing up my mashed potatoes. So, yeah, we'll check back and see if a natural release is good for this. Okay? Naturally releasing for 33 minutes. But sometime around minute 23 or 24, I heard the pin drop. So I know there's no pressure left in this. I mean, you can press this if you want, but look, see the pin? It's already dropped. It's down below the black. So this is done, but I've been busy. I made some peas and some mashed potatoes. And I have cleaned up all of my kitchen. So, you know, that's helpful. Thanks for helping, Gidge. You know, big help. Appreciate it. See you later. Anyway, I've gotten a lot done. So, we're going to open this bad mamma jamma up. Oh, I'm supposed to hit cancel. I always forget to do that. We're going to open this up and take a look-see. Oh my gosh, it looks good. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to wash my lid while it's still hot. I always wash my lid while it's hot. I find it easier. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these deer steaks out of here, and then I'm going to make me a little cornstarch slurry and thicken this up just a touch on the saute setting. So I just put my cornstarch water slurry in there, and I've got my saute function on high. I didn't really wait for it to preheat because it was already bubbling because it was so hot from the pressure cooker. I pulled my meat out first, and by the way, I had a heck of a time doing that because it was falling apart. That's a very, very good sign. But this will take just a second to get it the right thickness that I want. It's already kind of thick from the flour that was on the steaks, so it won't take long. This is so gravy. So I'm just going to hit cancel on my function. I'm going to put my glove on right here. I find it's easier to deal with this sucker when it's out of the liner because I have my pot kind of on a raised section and I'm short. So I'm going to add back all my meat. First I'm going to unplug this. And then I'm going to add back all my meat to this real fancy like. Throw this over into the sink with my pot. And I'm just going to let these hang out in here for a while until we're ready to eat. Just got a few more rolls to make and we're good to go. Well, here's the test. I mean, seriously, it's just like falling apart. I'm going to take a bite and see what we think. It's perfect.
Absolutely perfect.
So Gidget is joining me for a few sum-ups of this recipe that was a rip-roaring success. First of all, this was all done in less than an hour. And the only reason why it took that long was that I did my mashed potatoes on the stovetop separately. And peas, which, peas, I just heat them up with some butter. I mean, it's no big deal. But anyway, back to the venison. It was a roaring success. Here's my final thoughts on it. You can do 10 to 15 minutes on high pressure after you brown them. And then I would give it 10 minutes of natural release at least, and then release it. Or you can do what I did and let it naturally release and take your time and let it hang out. It's in so much gravy, it's not gonna go dry on you. But it was falling apart. So 10 to 15 minutes, high pressure, depending on how much you've got. And again, remember, when you're cooking in the Instant Pot, quantity does not affect your cooking time. You can double the amount of meat you put in there, and it's always the same cooking time, okay? So 10 to 15 minutes, high pressure, and then at least 10 minutes natural release. Or all the way, whatever. I did all the way and forgot about it, and it went for like a half an hour. It went 10 more minutes after the pen dropped. And it was still perfect. So this is pretty versatile. Like, I think this would be pretty hard to screw up. Enjoy. I hope you like it.